hello, and welcome to another edition of Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham, where Team Needham discusses everything healthcare. I'm your host, Shawn Needham, along with my wonderful wife, Janet, and we are streaming live from the Moses Lake Professional Pharmacy Podcast Studio, and we are super excited to have Laura Dentone on our podcast today discussing Redox. So, Laura, welcome to our show.
Thanks for having me, Shawn and Janet. It's great to see you guys again.
So tell us a little bit about your history and how you got into Redox.
Well, I'll try to make it a brief story. About 3 years ago, I had a really severe ear infection, and I had been fighting it for several weeks. And a friend of mine that I had talked to a number of times, a dentist that I knew was part of a medical freedom group that I was involved with, he said he found out what was going on, and he said, "Oh, you need to drink this and you need to put it in your ear." And so I trusted him enough to look at the science and to see some information and say, all right, I'll give this a chance. And I started taking it. And not only did my ear repair in 2 weeks, where I had no signs of a ruptured eardrum, no signs of scar tissue. The ENT said, your eardrum looks perfect. That was kind of a surprise to me. But within a few months, several struggles that I had been dealing with for a long time, 3.5 years of postpartum struggles, really started to disappear. And that was pivotal for me. And I realized the more that I learned about what this could do for people, that everybody deserves to know that this exists, and not enough people do. So we have a profound technology that works at the cellular level across every system, every organ, every function of the body. And it's a joy to be able to share that gift with people.
Awesome. So the chemist part of me, when I think of redox, I think of the old redox reactions that we would learn in chemistry. So, which means reduction and oxidation. So is that kind of what we're talking about here?
Yeah, absolutely. The more that we've dug into the science, I think probably 40 plus years ago, science didn't believe it was possible for these molecules to exist outside the body. They'd been studying it for decades, trying to understand what it did. And these reductions and oxidants molecules are created in every cell in your body. Your mitochondria are constantly making them. But as you get older, you don't make as many. And as your body is bombarded by toxins and other environmental factors, it can also impact your body's ability to make these. So the fact that there was this breakthrough about 15 years ago, where they figured out how to stabilize these molecules outside the body, we can ingest them, we can put them on topically, you can put them literally anywhere that they come in contact with your cells, and they begin to signal the body to repair at an accelerated rate. But yes, ultimately it is that foundational chemistry idea of reductants and oxidants, finding, sometimes we talk about it like a teeter-totter, that your body needs to find balance, and these molecules are part of that whole picture.
Awesome. So Janet, what kind of questions do you have for Laura?
So if it's available in different forms, lay it out, like you said, like, do you sell it in a topical? Do you sell it in powder form? How does this product get to market?
Yeah, well, the primary delivery mechanism is a liquid. That's what we've had for 15 years now. Hard to believe it's been around that long, especially with the amount of research that I had done into health sciences for the last decade. I didn't know about it, and that's the case for many people. The liquid was the flagship original product, and about 5 years later, they came out with a topical gel, and the topical gel can be applied anywhere externally. So we often talk about that the liquid works from the inside out and the gel works from the outside in. And then we also have 2 other mechanisms, a second gel that is a higher concentration. And then we also have new last year, Redox clay mask, the only clay mask in the world that combines the benefits of bentonite clay with redox signaling molecules. So you can start signaling those cells while you're penetrating deep into the layers to pull out the toxins.
So what are some typical things that people use this for?
Well, the sky's the limit
Right.
because you're talking about every function of your body, every cell in your body is constantly needing to be rebuilt. And so the healthier that those cells are when they're rebuilt, the better off you'll be. But I think about it as kind of a range of uses. One of my favorite uses is from an emergency standpoint. I think that everybody should have this in their emergency medicine, no matter what. It's the first line of defense. I can show you here a picture of a friend of mine who was burned in a house fire. And he was literally at the ER that day, and his wife called and said, "Is there any way I can get some of that from you? Because mine was burned in the house." And we started spraying his face and having him drink it. And in less than 48 hours, that's how much he repaired. So I think an emergency standpoint, it doesn't matter what kind of an emergency this is profound. But from a whole health standpoint, it's working on all 75 trillion cells. So in my case, it was postpartum struggles. That was a big deal. For my children, they've struggled with respiratory issues, chronic colds and sinus infections and ear infections. And being able to get this into their system, and I use a nebulizer with them quite frequently whenever they've got a cough or stuffy nose, and it has just reduced the amount of illness in our house by at least 80%. As I look at the winters the last few years. As far as from an aesthetic or cosmetic perspective, when you are getting the cell signaling right, we see things like this, where this woman, her neck and her jaw, you can see just in a month the difference that it makes in renewal of those skin cells. And then from an athletic performance standpoint, taking a look at some of what you guys have been up to, what this can do, helping your body with your VO2 max, helping you with your recovery, your stamina. It's across the board. So we know that it impacts the body in 5 major areas of your health based on some genetic studies that were done a few years back. We know that it's your cardiovascular system, your inflammation, your digestion, your hormones, and your inflammatory response. So, with all of those, if we just took inflammation as the primary topic, it's essentially the source of all disease is inflammation, and that's the source of aging as well. When we start to talk about anti-aging, that term inflammaging is something that I learned in the process of digging into this.
Yeah, I want to say, speaking of athletes, I want to say that a few years ago, I was at a mountain bike race in Moab, and I saw a couple guys, and they actually beat me, that had Redux jerseys on. So just FYI, I'm pretty sure I remember seeing that.
That doesn't surprise me at all. One of my mentors, team lead in this, he just won the Ironman in Coeur d'Alene in May, I believe it was. He was 17 minutes ahead of any of the other competitors, and he was in the over 60 age bracket, I believe. So yeah, the athletic performance benefit is pretty staggering.
Well, and every reaction in our body, everything in our body comes down to chemistry and electrons. The electron chemistry is what it comes down to. Every reaction everywhere comes down to that. And that's what's so cool about chemistry. So this is basically getting down to the basics, the most basics as you can get.
Yeah, it's the fundamental foundational piece of our health. And, sometimes we talk about it as energy or like a flashlight. If you've got a flashlight and the batteries are really dim, when you're trying to shine that light around, you can't really see what's going on, but you replace the batteries. Which is what this is doing in your cells. And suddenly your cells can see that there's a problem that they need to deal with and start taking care of it. So it really is that vitality, is another good way to think about it, is that vital energy for our life.
So what can patients expect? Like how do they go about starting this program?
Well, the easiest part is that you really just have to drink it and put it on. So it's not a huge commitment there. The best way is to reach out to myself, and we can talk about what your specific needs are, so that I can kind of tailor, what is the dosage better for what your circumstances are, give you some tips and tricks on how to best utilize it in your home, and then get started. We generally tell people that you really want to commit to 90 days. I'm sure that's the same with a lot of the things that you guys are doing, or if you have an exercise program, you're not going to expect a huge turnaround in a matter of a couple of days. Although we do see that sometimes, especially those emergencies. But if you commit to 90 days, 90% of people will see a big difference in their energy, in their sleep, in their digestion, and then it just goes up from there.
Janet, what questions do you have for Laura?
Well, how do people get a hold of you? Do you have a website or?
Yeah, so the website I have is redox.works, REDOX .works, WORX. And there, what I've really tried to do is make that a place where when I started looking into this, going, okay, there's all this information, it's in so many different places. I wanted to have a place where people can come and see testimonials from all kinds of different locations, see what all this can do for me, and then also give you a place that you can connect with me. So you can message me through my website there. I've got my phone number on there, and you can text that 775-577-8600. And then another ththing, if you want to click on that miracle gel link that you kind of see in the middle left there, that I kept getting more and more stories of people saying, oh, and I did this, and oh, and I did this. So I didn't like the fact that the gel was more focused on what it can do cosmetically, because it can do so much more than that. So I started putting in people's personal, this is how I'm using it, this is the success I'm getting with it, as inspiration of ways that others may want to utilize it.
So typically for somebody, for like the gel, for instance, how often would somebody have to use that?
It depends on what you're trying to go for.
Right.
If you're looking for joint relief, if you've got something that's kind of stuck, we will often see you can put that on 3 times in 5 minutes, and your range of motion will improve and your discomfort will improve in just a matter of about 10 minutes. But if it's something that's more chronic, you need to, maybe use it a few times. My husband had a partial tear in his bicep about a year ago, and our chiropractor said that's going to take about 6 weeks. He couldn't even buckle his own seatbelt because the strain was so severe there. And I said, let's try. And I just said, here, take a little tube with you, put it in your pocket, put it on at work a few times a day. We would put it on 3 times at night, a couple of times. And in a week, he said, it feels like it's all better. Another example, I had some plantar warts on the bottom of my foot when I first started this. And they weren't severe, but they were enough that starting to get tender when you walked on it, the pressure you could feel. And I started putting it on. At the time, I didn't know as much as I know now. I just put it on once a day before I went to bed. And the first couple of weeks, I thought, it's not really doing anything. But after about 3 weeks, I realized they were gone. So if you utilize it a little bit more, when it's something that's a little bit more severe, you can get those results faster. So, working with somebody who, like myself, who has some experience that can guide you a little bit, is a good way to go. But the good news is that it's you can never hurt yourself with it because it's native to your body. So you're not going to overdose on it. It's not like other, a prescription or some of the herbal supplements that can be dangerous if you use too much.
That was my next question. So you answered that question already.
Yes.
So
in
what
fact,
about,
they did 17 years of research and they could not find a dosage that this caused any harm. So
wow.
pretty remarkable.
So what about pricing? Everybody's going to ask about pricing. So, and I know that's going to vary depending on the disease, but tell us about that.
Sure. So, an average household, a single person wanting to take kind of a maintenance dose, that's going to run you around $150 a month. Just to take the liquid internally. The topical gel is, I always recommend don't pay retail. You always want to pay wholesale. And then we have rewards programs as well where you can get product back. So that's a great way to stick with it. But when somebody's on a budget, even the gels ends up about $50 after tax and shipping. And there's so many things that you can do with it that, I think of that as more important than any other over-the-counter topical thing that I might go and pick up down the street at the drugstore. And you can get so much better results for so many areas of the body.
Yeah, without any side effects. I love that part.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And looking at what you guys, I was reading your a little bit of your book over the weekend. It was fantastic. Just your outlook on changing health and looking at things from a different perspective. If you want something that is going to maximize your longevity and your health overall, there isn't anything more potent, more powerful than what redox signaling molecules can do in your system. And that really is what gives you control and freedom over your own life.
Yeah, I mean, it's just true. It's just pure science that if you don't have those processes optimized in your body, oxidation and reduction, and we know how much oxidation has to do with aging. I mean, one of the great examples is, oxidation of fruit, for instance. The reason fruit turns brown is because of oxidation. So if you have things that can help to stop the oxidation process, there's your fruit's going to stay not get brown as easy, I guess, is the easiest
It's
thing
not
to
going to
say.
mold
So,
as fast.
yeah, right. So, our body's going to be the same way when it comes to, oxidation and reduction reactions. So,
Yep, absolutely. I've even done it with flowers as a test. I don't have that picture handy to show you, but some people will say, "Oh, it's just salt water," and so I actually put 3 different tulips in one in water, one in salt water, and one in the redox. And 6 days later, the the one is still standing pretty strong. The one that was in the salt water was molded, and the one that was in the water was completely fallen over. So it's we can see it not just in our bodies, but in plants and animals as well.
I'd like to see pictures of that.
I will send it to you.
I
Yep,
like a time-lapse video. Could you do a time-lapse video?
I'll have to do it again, but I think it would be worth it. I'll do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when people say it's just salt water, it's like, well, I mean, without it's more than that, because without salt and without water, our bodies would die. And so the details matter. I guess I should say the details matter.
For sure. Our bodies are 70% saline, but what we're doing with them, are what our mitochondria is doing with them, making these molecules, that's the key.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So, Janet, do you have any final questions before we wrap this podcast up?
No, I don't.
Well, Laura, as we wrap this podcast up, I have a question for you.
Uh-huh.
What do you have a passion for?
I have a passion for empowering people to have the health that they want to keep their life where they want it to be. You know, we met through health freedom conversations,
Mm.
and you know, I have a passion for keeping my kids healthy and keeping them on the right path where they are not forced into procedures or medical interventions that are unnecessary. Um, I shattered 6 inches of my right femur in a car accident when I was 19. And I remember um, in that journey of recovery, I remember thinking that someday there has to be a way for me to be involved in helping people to recover. And I spent 20 years as an electrical engineer, and it just wasn't as fulfilling as I would wanted it to be at the end. And when I moved over into sharing this technology, I just love it. I gave some gel to a friend at church the other day, and her 10-year-old little girl had a sprained finger, and she came up to me at school the next week, and she just had this big smile on her face, and she showed me her finger, and it was out of the splint, and I said, "Does it feel better?" And she said, "Oh yeah, so much better." And those are the things that really touch my heart. I love hearing those stories from people.
Absolutely. That is very rewarding. So, and you basically helped us realize our goal of this podcast, which is to educate and empower individuals to take charge of their own health. So thank you, Laura, for helping us realize that goal.
I think it's a perfect match, and I love what you guys are doing. Thank you so much for being out
Thank
there.
thank you so much. And listeners and viewers, thank you for tuning in to Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham. Tune in Thursday to our midweek podcast, 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Thank you for listening.